All right, well, we're here with Barry Schwartz at Kahena. Came to visit Israel. So we had some questions that we wanted to ask him when he's in the office, specifically related to penguin, panda, and hummingbird. So to start off, Barry, the team wanted to know, has Google's drive to transparency with manual actions and webmaster tools reduced or increased chatter in the forums regarding penalties? And I guess a follow-up to that is any indication whether there's been an increase or decrease in reconsideration requests since then?
Right, so you're talking about when Google came out with their notification system for manual action, called the Manual Action Viewer. So if you don't know what that is, basically if you go to Google Webmaster Tools, under one of the sidebars there's a menu called Manual Action Viewer. You click on that, Google will tell you if you have a manual action. It's important for that everybody know that manual actions are different than algorithmic actions. Manual actions are basically when a Google or actually looks at your site and says you're doing something bad, and they'll go ahead and give you a manual penalty. Algorithmic penalties are when the algorithm itself, like one of these animals, actually does something to you. That won't tell you. The manual action viewer won't tell you if you have any of these penalties. That being said, your question was there an increase in chatter? I believe initially there was a major increase in chatter because people were able to, for the first time, to see, oh, I have a manual action penalty. How do I go ahead and prove it? So they looked at their webmaster tools. They said, "Oh my God, I have a, I don't know, some type of penalty, like a natural link penalty." They went to the forums and they said, "Hey, what do I do?" And you saw a lot of that. I think it's decreased a lot recently, and I think it's decreased a lot because people are able to now see if they even have a manual action or not. Now all you see are questions about penguin, panda, or hummingbird. This should be erased because people should be asking questions about hummingbird. They should be asking questions about penguin or panda or other algorithms like, you know, whatever, there are thousands of algorithms they have. So yeah, initially there probably was an increase, but it's probably been down a little bit.
Cool. So the next question was, so I posted actually a picture on Facebook. We were celebrating the removal of a manual penalty for one of our clients. And you actually made a comment and you said, "Don't dance yet, let me know if the traffic returns." So have you seen any cases or people talking in the forums about the traffic actually returning and anyone actually recovering for penalties?
All right, so you had a manual action for a client, not you personally, but one of your clients had a manual action.
Prior.
They hired you.
Before they hired us.
They hired you because they had a manual action. You removed the manual action, which a lot of people have success at doing, which is good. But usually after, I see very little people say, "Oh my God, my traffic's all back, I'm doing business again." Usually I think when somebody has a manual action, they also have probably one of these other algorithmic actions. Maybe I'm wrong, but usually I don't see a full recovery or even an 80% recovery after manual action is removed. There are people who claim they have seen that. I've never seen that in anybody's analytics before, where they have like a link, an unnatural link removal. Because what happens if you think about it, Google went ahead and discounted all these links, these unnatural links you had that were working for you before the manual penalty. Now they're discounted. Right. They also slapped on a penalty. So let's say you had all these links. You're up here. Google found you had all these links, unnatural links. All right, so they discounted those links, and they also slapped on a penalty over here. All right, fine, okay. Yep. So here are your links. Here's your ranking before. Am I messing this up?
No, you're fine.
You dropped down because your unnatural links were worth this. They got rid of all these bad links you had. Your ranking's now here. And then they also slapped on a penalty because of your links. So now you're back maybe up to here. It's not back to scale, but basically back up to here, but you're never going to go back up to here unless you get quality links.
So what do people do when that happens? So if someone had a manual penalty, which they probably have an algorithmic penalty also, and then they get the manual penalty removed, how do they get back up to this point? What are some things that you've heard people talking about in the forums that they've done to help them get back to that point?
I've honestly never seen a case where they got back to here. I've heard some people talk about it. I've never actually seen it. To get back to here, you have to get all those links back. Not the ones you had before, but new ones.
Good ones.
Good ones. So how do you do that? I don't know. That's another topic.
Okay. Have you heard of any other, this could be maybe a redundant question, but any trends that you've seen as far as, you know, penguin, this is totally redundant, so I'm going to say.
No, ask it.
Well, any trends that you've seen, it's really about rebounds or, you know.
On the algorithm side.
Yeah. On the algorithm side.
Yeah, so whenever there's an algorithm update, you usually hear most of the noise is coming from people who are hit by the algorithm that have a negative impact. but there are always a handful of cases that people are saying, hey, I recovered. Most people who recover are not going to go ahead and tell anybody they recovered because they don't want the exposure, people looking at their websites. But a lot of people do say they actually have recovered after one of the major updates. Now, it's hard to track updates in Panda now, but with Penguin it's easy because Google announced them. But Panda is now rolling every 30 or so days, so it's hard to tell. There's other algorithms also that are within here that nobody talks about. So it's hard to actually know what algorithm hit you. But yeah, I mean, I've definitely seen people say they recovered or they were hit after one of these major updates.
The next question is, will SEO agencies be forced to incorporate social media tactics for their clients? So Google Plus, and then possibly Twitter, Facebook, anything else that they could be using in the future?
All right, so there's two answers to that. One is currently Backcuts, as you know, said Google Plus is not part of the search ranking algorithm. But if you go ahead and look at personalized search, you'll see that if you like +1 something and I'm a friend of yours on Google Plus, it would actually have an impact on the ranking of that result when I search on personalized search. Right? The other thing is social media, Google Plus, it gets more awareness about your content out on the internet. The more awareness you have about your content on the internet, obviously,
so it's more of an indirect relationship.
You get links from it. Right? But there is a direct relationship. That's the thing. Like that said, there's no direct relationship. But if you're logged in and I like something and you're friends with me on Google Plus, you're in my circle, it will have a direct impact on what you see in the search results. So it might not be part of the core search algorithm, but it's definitely part of some personalized algorithm we have.
Right, real estate. Yeah, we saw also that Google is now showing hashtags. You can search for hashtags and get them showing up inside search results. So do you think that's related at all?
It's obvious. I mean, it's pulling from...
As far as ranking factors, though.
I don't think it's related to ranking factors. No, not yet, at least. Most people don't believe Backcuts when he says things. I tend to, but obviously, if he's going to say something in black and white, I think it's true. Right. When he starts skirting around the issue, you know there's something there.
No.
What?
We all like math. So the next question is, with factors like mobile search, context, and even potentially Google Glass on rise, where do you see SEO and the internet marketing in 5 years?
So same place search for me. So how, like you're on your smartphone right now. A minute ago you were on your laptop. Yep. You're like, oh, I should use my smartphone for this.
You said that.
Oh, I said that. And you're like, yeah, probably, yeah, that makes sense, right?
Right.
I think most people watching this video, most people like us, are using our mobile phones more often to do searches than they are, less often on their desktops. Doesn't mean the percentages are changing. So Google says if your site's not, mobile friendly, it might have a negative impact on your rankings for mobile search queries. They didn't say this which way to do it. They said responsive is best. It's whatever. I'm not going to get to all those technical questions. But if people are searching on your mobile phones, and you're in an industry that mobile search is very important, you can look at your analytics and see what percentage of your traffic is mobile. And if you see there's a large percentage of your traffic is mobile, above 20%, I would say, you want to make sure your site is mobile friendly. That being said, if it's not, Google will probably have a negative impact on your website for the mobile search queries. So you want to definitely optimize for, mobile search. It's not necessarily optimizing in general, but it's optimizing for mobile search. How that will impact Google Glass, it's hard to know for sure right now. I think Google Glass is more of a where you are, what you're asking type of pattern thing. So you got to kind of think of Google now and building. I think marketers should actually start looking towards what information do they have in their databases that they would provide useful data to their user, and what could they do to actually build an app or some type of Google Glass service to send them information. So for example, I'm currently in the process of building something called Jew Glass. It's basically a Jewish app for Google Glass that knows where you are and will send you information based off your location or what time it is during the day. So if you're in a synagogue, it's going to know you're in a synagogue, and it's going to say, all right, you're in a synagogue, these are the things you probably should say while you're in synagogue. I'm thinking about how I could provide useful information to Jewish people through location-aware devices like Glass or Android phones or iPhones with my data that I have that Google doesn't have yet. Obviously, Google's taking over niches and they're taking over industries by taking people's data. But if you can provide data that they might not have access to, maybe they'll acquire you, or maybe you'll provide a service that you'll get a lot of traffic to, and you'll be able to monetize. Right now, you can't monetize anything with Google Glass, but with Android phones and iPhones, you can.
Cool. Cool. Does anyone have any other questions?
Check your phone.
You got a question?
Text message.
Live Q&A.
While he looks, I had a question. You mentioned, of course, that Panda is rolling out every 30 days or so, but Penguin is more just whenever they refresh the algorithm. At any point, do you see or have you heard anything about Penguin making that shift to being an ongoing rolling process?
I have not heard anything like that. I wouldn't expect it for another year or so. They have to really perfect it, like they did with Panda. So I'd expect it one day. But when that day happens, it's going to be hard for SEOs to keep track of all that stuff. I am begging Google to come up with in web action tools, not just have a manual action viewer, but an algorithmic action viewer. It's kind of hard for them to do that, but hopefully.
So we have one other question that was just texted in. The question is iOS versus Android. Which do you prefer?
It's funny. So I prefer iOS over Android. I carry both with me, but my main device is iOS. When I went to the Google Glass Explorer, basically they had this event where a bunch of Google Glass users would go to Google and talk to each other and be some type of networking thing with, I don't know, a bunch of people wearing Google Glass. And I asked a bunch of the Googlers who had Google Glass, what do they use as their main phone? And I probably asked like 3 or 4 different Googlers. Everyone said for their personal phone, they have an iPhone, but for their work phone, they have Android. So I found that to be funny. I personally like iOS. I feel like it does things a little bit faster in terms of less clicks. It's more fluid. It's easier to develop for because of the screen sizes. But Android is definitely something that if you're building apps, you have to know, you have to use. You have to build these apps for Android because most of the market's there these days. And Android has a lot of benefits. I love Google Now integration. I love how it lets you do certain things that iOS won't let you do, but at the same time, I personally use iOS.
Cool. Any other questions before we say goodbye to Barry?
One quick question, which no, just a small thing. So there's a recent Bing It On experiment produced by Microsoft you're familiar with.
Yeah.
And then Freakonomics came out and debunked it, and then there was a back and forth. So I was wondering what you thought in terms of Bing's potential and results from their study.
Okay. So Bing versus Google. I think it was funny. So I thought when Bing first did all their marketing before it was actually called Bing, I thought they would take over a lot. I thought they would have a lot more market share now than they do right now. I was wrong. I thought the same thing with Internet Explorer. Remember when Firefox was big and nobody had Internet Explorer? They just completely took over the market by embedding Internet Explorer in every single computer that they released. They were doing the same thing with their search engine. The full search was Microsoft Live Search, I think, back then. It didn't have an impact. I was completely shocked. But I think they're doing great. I think they're actually capturing a crazy amount of market share. I think they're up to like 20 or 30% these days. They obviously own Yahoo right now. We'll see how long that lasts for with Marissa in place. But the Bing It On challenge itself, it's cute. I don't know how much Microsoft says it has an impact, but Microsoft saying bashing Google has more of an impact for them in terms of market share than that. And that's obviously a bash on Google, but it'll be interesting to see. That whole Freakonomics thing, there was back and forth. Bing said, you're wrong, and Freakonomics never got back to them. Matt Cutts was just like pushing, like saying, oh, look at this, look what Freakonomics did. And then Bing's like, well, Freakonomics is wrong because of this. And I find that all to be gossip in the industry. The bottom line is market share. So it'll be cool to see a year from now how much more share they've got, but I'm impressed with, I think, what they've got so far.
Cool. Okay. That's it. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Thanks for coming.
Yay.